Do you think this is a story about a woman of easy virtue? Helena Bonham asked as a group of Perriman financial executives sat in a bar at Boston's Logan Airport, waiting for a snow-delayed flight. How about this story? I know one woman who was so crafty that she would fly to Norway once a year for the company's annual meetings and spend most of the week in bed with the CEO's son. She did this for 20 years, and her old man never suspected anything. I mean, in the office she was a good girl and followed all the rules, and for 51 weeks of the year you would think she was just the nicest, conservative, quiet woman you would ever meet. But once a year she went to Norway for corporate meetings and was turning into a woman of easy virtue. She thought the rest of us didn't know what was going on, but geez, woman, when you leave the hotel every night with the same handsome guy, and don't get back to your hotel until it's time to shower and change for the next day's meetings. No one is a fool, well, except maybe her husband. But I don't think he can be blamed for that. Why would he think that his practically good girl wife would cheat on him 1 week a year? I worked with this woman for 15 years. I left there about 2 years ago. I wonder if she still sleeps with him. What was her name? Tracy. Tracy Shandell. Yes, exactly. I bet this poor guy will die without ever knowing that his wife cheated on him. Hey, wait, we have a guy in our group named Shandell, Claude Weissenhunt whispered to me. You don't think she's talking about Shandy's wife, Herb? You met her. She really looks like an ice queen, but she's one hot mama. That's the story, Brian, as best I can remember, Herb Mangold told me over the phone. They then started talking about someone else cheating too, but I knew I had to call you as soon as I heard it. I hope it's not your Tracy, Brian. I honestly hope so. But if it was my wife, I'd want someone to tell me. Thank you, Herb. Really? Thank you. I also hope it's not her, I told my colleague. Hey, can you do me a favor and not tell anyone else about this? If Claude mentions this again, just calmly extinguish the story, and I'll tell Claude myself if I have to. But only if I have to. I have worked with Herb for 15 years at Perriman and would trust him with my children's lives, so I knew I could trust him to keep this a secret. I also trusted that he got the story right, which meant I had a world problem. My wife, Tracy, works in the management of Johansen Limited, a financial services company based in Norway. And yes, for 23 years, she has been flying to Norway as part of the management team for a week of corporate meetings. And yes, she is conservative, well-mannered and reserved, and one hot mama at that. But my Tracy would never cheat on me, could never cheat on me. Or could she? Helena Bonham's words came back to haunt me. I bet this poor guy will die without knowing that his wife cheated on him. Sitting and hoping it wasn't true wasn't an option. This poor guy was about to find out the truth. Tracy and I have been married for 25 years. We met in college and dated for 3 years before getting married. We both work in financial services, both in management and financially we have achieved success. We have 3 wonderful children, one graduated from college, one in his 3rd year of college, and the youngest a freshman. So we became empty nesters this year, and while it took some getting used to at first, being back together has rekindled an already good marriage. Or at least that's what I thought until a few minutes ago. I sat at my office desk and pondered the situation for a while. I really didn't know where to start. Tracy started working at Johansen right out of college, about a year before we got married. It took her 3 years to get to corporate meetings in Norway, and she has been going every year since. She usually didn't have much to say about these meetings, either before or after. They just seemed like a necessary evil. Thinking back, she did seem a little irritated before the trip when she was pregnant with our first child, but I assumed it was because she was 5 months along and starting to feel uncomfortable. Now, of course, I wonder if she was annoyed because she was pregnant while dating her lover. I opened my favorite bookmarks in Firefox and clicked on the Johansen site. It was a beautiful, fast-loading site worthy of one of the world's leading financial services companies. Since it was Tracy's company, I looked it up occasionally, but until today, the only corporate executive I knew was the CEO, Gunnar Marxist. Marxist brought 3 of my relatives to the company, 2 sons and a daughter, and I found their photos and biographies on the site, along with several other high-ranking employees. I read the children's biographies in chronological order, so up to Henrik's biography Markista, I got there last. However, when I opened the biography and received a photo larger than a postage stamp, I almost threw up my lunch. I was looking at the faces of my two youngest children, Jason and Marilyn. Damn it. Tracy herself is of Norwegian descent, with long blonde hair and sparkling blue eyes, so it never occurred to me that the two youngest children were blonde with blue eyes, just as I never wondered when Now was born with brown hair and eyes like mine. But after I looked at Henrik's photo of Markista, there was no doubt that these children could not be mine. I quickly made the calculation. Typically, company meetings are held in August, and both children's birthdays are in May. Crap, I desperately needed to talk to someone, but who could I really trust with this secret, and who would have the strength of character to give me sound advice? After Tracy, the next person I usually turned to in such situations was my father-in-law, Alf Schlegel. He has been my closest and most trusted advisor since my father died when I was in my late 30s. He was simply a reliable person who never interfered in any situation, and because of this, he became my life advisor on those rare occasions when I needed to talk to someone other than my wife. But I couldn't go to Alf. How to tell a person? Sorry, sir, but I think your daughter is a cheater and has been sleeping with someone else behind my back for over 20 years. It quickly became apparent to me that I didn't have many close friends as I assessed the situation. My next closest advisor was my favorite bartender, the night manager of a small bar near my house called Simply My Place. It was an old-fashioned pub where I would sometimes go for a couple of quick drinks or bring Tracy for a quick dinner. Over the years, I became close friends with January, never call me Jan Sparnacle, the owner's feisty but level-headed daughter. She was a few years younger than me, but had worked in a pub all her life and had developed a good understanding of people because of it. She has given me her thoughts and advice on various issues over the years, but never on such big issues. I hoped she would be up to the challenge, although I wasn't sure I could handle it myself. I took a couple of hours Frambus at work and headed to my place. I arrived about an hour before January started her shift. I sat at the bar chatting with her father, Raleigh O'Root, until I had a couple of Jack Daniels on the rocks. Since I rarely came to the bar this early, I hadn't spoken to Slet in a long time because he usually went home as soon as he finished his shift. This is how you stay married to the same woman for 50 years, he often boasted. How's your beautiful wife, Brian? Asked Slets. Immersed deep in thought, I probably didn't hear the question, so Slets repeated it from a few feet away, louder this time. I heard it, as did I think most of the bar's patrons. I hesitated, not knowing how to answer a simple question. She's fine, Dad. Off, January answered for me, approaching me from the left, having just entered through the service entrance. Hello, dear, how are you? I asked, hugging her in a friendly bear hug. She hugged me back tightly and, pressing her ear to my ear, whispered, I'm fine, but I feel like there's something wrong in Brian's world, right? I stepped back from the hug with a shocked expression on my face. How could she know, I thought. Seeing the look on my face, January sat down on the chair next to me and quietly asked, It's Tracy, right? What's going on, Shandi? I haven't confirmed anything yet, and it will take a while, but I have it from a very reliable source that she has been cheating on me behind my back for over 20 years. What? How the hell did you not know this was going on all these years? She said in shock. Because she only does it 1 week a year when she goes to Norway for her company's corporate meetings. Apparently, she's been sleeping with the boss's son for the last 25 years, 1 week a year. "Oo," she answered. "Exactly," I replied. "Well, you can't just do nothing, unless you're one of those perverts who likes it when their wife cheats on them," she said bluntly, looking at my reaction. I looked at her with annoyance, which should have told her everything she needed to know, and she continued. "The weaklings of this world would ask you to ask yourself whether you'd be better off with or without her. But that's not how it works in the real world, Bri," she began. "If you are the person I think you are, You cannot live with a cheater who breaks her vows, even if you have not known it for a very long time, and this only happens for 1 week a year when she is abroad. I don't think you can live with yourself if you give her a pass like that. And that's the point. You may have loved her more than life itself. Maybe you still do. But what kind of life will you have if you throw away your self-respect? A lie remains a lie. The youngest 2 children are also his, I interrupted. January looked like someone had knocked the air out of her. She looked exactly like how I felt when Herb told me what he heard. I filled the pause as she sat there in shock. It's not confirmed yet, I said. I thought I would give all 3 kids ancestry DNA kits for Christmas and find out in a couple of months. No, no, this is the wrong way, she noted. If you do that, everyone will see that the cat is out of the bag, and then you'll probably ruin any chance of revenge. The M word. That's why I came in January. Like me, she wouldn't put up with it. I didn't need a marriage counselor. I needed someone who would take my side into account. You need to keep this completely under wraps until you're ready to do something about it. But if what you say is true, you could still lose these children, and I know it will break your heart. So whatever you do, and I'm not sure there's really much that can be done, must be tempered by your desire to remain a father to these 2 children. She then quickly changed the subject. How about we bring everyone here for a quick dinner during the Christmas holidays? I will personally serve everyone's drinks and personally ensure that old glasses are removed from the table into a sealed container. Then you, take the containers to the DNA laboratory that I know about. We will get DNA from all 5, which will ultimately be a better and more accurate way. And at least I'll get the cost of dinner from you, you poor bastard. She smiled widely as she inserted the hairpin, but she needed to somehow clear the air. In addition, she gave me good advice. This will be a marathon, not a sprint. What are you going to do about sex? She asked next, quickly changing the topic again. She asked me what I was thinking about. No, because she immediately smiled a devilish smile and replied, don't think you got it right, idiot. I'm not asking if you want to have sex, asshole. I'm asking what you're going to do when Tracy wants sex, like usual. You can't just stop because then she'll realize something is wrong. Damn, you're good at this. I hope for Roy's sake he never gets on your bad side, I replied, referring to her husband, to whom she had been married for about 25 years. I didn't think about it at all. Good point. I guess I'll have to continue for the sake of appearances, but maybe to teach her a subtle lesson by denying her something. I'll repeat it, idiot, she said bluntly. You must do everything you normally do with her and for her until you are ready to act. She's not a stupid woman. In fact, she has been leading you by the nose for quite a long time. In other words, you're telling me that for now I need to leave the guns, take the cannoli. Exactly. Great reference to The Godfather, by the way. Stay calm. Do not rush. Of course, this will be easier said than done. You can't just stop loving someone overnight, no matter how much they hurt you, but this betrayal stung like hydrogen peroxide on an open wound. I think I was a little quieter than usual over the Christmas season, and Tracy's parents noticed it. Luckily for me, they didn't go to Tracy for answers. Because of our excellent relationship, they came straight to me and asked if there was anything on their mind or if I was sick. I felt terrible for deceiving them. I'll miss Alf and Barb when Tracy and I get divorced. I wonder if I can get custody of them. I was sad to know that this would be our last Christmas together as a family. I looked at the kids as they did something funny and remembered when they were little, when I didn't know that 2 of them were born to Tracy, but from another person, and I still considered myself the luckiest person on earth, having a smart and beautiful wife. I wonder if she'll run to Marxist after divorce. I knew he was married, but I wonder if he would exchange his wife for my ex, or if she would become his permanent mistress. What will my children do when they find out? Will I remain a daddy, or just dad? So many questions, so few answers. 3 weeks after Christmas, I had DNA results that confirmed what I already knew. Amy was the daughter of both Tracy and me, and Jason and Marilyn were the children of Tracy, and some as yet unnamed idiot who I assumed was Henrik Marcus. Tracy was going to a bachelorette party the following Thursday after I got my DNA results, so I took this opportunity to see January again at my place. I showed her the results, and she handed me a folder with several divorce lawyers she had found for me. "You're not going to let the courts rip you off in this divorce," January said. "Your children are almost out of the house. Your house is now joint property and will be part of a 5,050 split. So your only concern should be what you want to do in terms of revenge. And whatever you do, don't overstep your boundaries so as not to alienate the children." All of these factors were taken into account, and it seemed to me that the best way for me to get revenge was financially. First, I need to file for divorce. Then after that, I was going to file a lawsuit against Johansson for not following their moral code, which led to my divorce. The next step was a lawsuit against Markista for alimony. That last part depended on when my youngest two children would find out he was their father. Sooner or later, they will find out, and I wanted him to pay the maximum if possible. It's not that I was going to keep the money for myself. I was actually going to split the amount into 3 equal parts and create a trust fund for all my children. I contacted one of the lawyers that January had selected for me and began the process. I almost blew it a few months later. Our 26th wedding anniversary came on March 23rd, and I took the whole family and Tracy's parents to one of the best restaurants in town, Pasqualone, for a sumptuous dinner. I watched Tracy pick up jewelry as we prepared to leave and noticed a small velvet bag tucked into the corner of the bottom tier of her jewelry box. I've bought Tracy a lot of beautiful jewelry over the years, and I didn't remember anything coming in a velvet bag. I automatically reached into the pouch, opened the drawstring, and pulled out 2 very expensive gold bracelets with many turquoise pendants. As a financial person, I could estimate their value by eye. One bracelet had a dozen pendants, the other 11. "Wow. When did you receive this?" I asked before I had time to think about my words. Tracy looked, blushed, and quickly took them from my hands. These old things," she stuttered. "Oh, these are just some trinkets that I bought in Norway about 100 years ago." She didn't look me in the eye when she said this and quickly put them back in the pouch and jewelry box. That's when it dawned on me these were probably gifts from Markista, with the addition of a pendant each year to commemorate their week together. She probably brings them with her to Norway and wears them for him. This put Tracy a bit on edge for the rest of the evening. I know Alf and Barb noticed this, and I think all 3 children felt that something was wrong. Tracy's trip to Norway was scheduled for August 1421. She acted as calm as ever about it, and knowing what I know now, I had to admire her acting skills. She didn't seem the least bit different in the weeks leading up to the trip. If I had not known that the children were not mine, I would have thought that this whole story was made up. She even kissed me goodbye as usual before getting into the company limousine to the airport on Sunday morning. My flight to Oslo, Norway, was later that day. I booked a full week of vacation without telling Tracy, the kids, or Tracy's parents. "There are things you need to see for yourself," I told January when I made my plans. I arrived late Sunday evening, rented a car, and headed to my hotel, which was just a few blocks from the hotel where Johansson held corporate meetings and where out-of-town employees stayed. On Monday afternoon, I did a little sightseeing. Oslo is definitely a beautiful city. From the program Tracy showed me, meetings were scheduled to end at 4 p.m. each day. Dinner with local Johansson employees was scheduled for 6 p.m., although any of the Americans could opt out and explore the city on their own. The meetings were scheduled to end Friday at noon, leaving the Americans about a day and a half to explore the city. I started waiting outside the hotel around 4 p.m., knowing that Tracy would need time to change into non-working clothes. I was wearing sunglasses and a fake beard, but other than that I thought Tracy wouldn't recognize me because I was the last person she would expect to see in Norway. She left the hotel wearing a classic, but shorter than usual, black dress that I had never seen her wear before. The top of the dress was open to the middle of her chest, and her body looked great. She was wearing black shoes with 3-inch heels, and I noticed bracelets on both wrists with various charms that I had seen several months ago in her jewelry box, which she called old trinkets. Besides, I wasn't stupid. These old trinkets were worth about $5,000 each. She got into the corporate limousine. I couldn't see if the idiot was already in the car, but when they pulled up to the restaurant, he got out of the limo first and then helped her out. She leaned down and kissed him on the lips before they headed inside. I sat and ate a couple of yogurts while I waited for them to return, which happened a couple of hours later. They got into the car and drove to another hotel, probably the one where the idiot was staying. I had no information whether his wife was home, but at least he didn't risk bringing Tracy to his home. I spent an incredibly boring night in my rental car watching some movies on my iPad. At 5:56 a.m., Tracy left the hotel, apparently not looking as fresh as last night, and got into the limousine. The idiot didn't go with her. They drove back to the first hotel, and she went inside when they arrived. This gave her time to shower and change before the meetings started again at 9 a.m. I returned to my hotel and slept restlessly for several hours. Seeing her with him broke my heart and made me angry. To think that she did this to me for 24 years. I followed her to his hotel on Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday nights, watching movies in my car until she left and returned to her hotel. By Friday, when the meetings ended at noon, I was dead tired and completely angry. By 1:30, Tracy was dressed in more casual clothes and got into the company limousine. Unlike other days, when Tracy had only a few of her colleagues with her when she got into the limousine, this time there was a large group gathered in front of the hotel. A few heads turned, but no one seemed too outraged that Tracy was getting into a corporate limousine with a suitcase alone. Either they assumed it was all business, or she had been doing it for so long that no one was paying attention. I followed them as they toured several attractions in. Friday and Saturday, I sat in the car, drank coffee, and ate yogurt. I tried local fast food places, but found that the yogurt was better. My clothes were wrinkled, and I was tired and irritable. I felt like the old TV detective Columbo. It was a great way to slowly kill my love for Tracy. On Saturday evening, they got into a limousine and drove to a remote, expensive restaurant. Since Tracy was leaving the next day, I assumed it was their farewell dinner for the year. It's almost time to work. I assumed that a person like Marxist had a reservation and they were seated immediately as soon as they showed up, so I waited about 30 minutes before getting out of the car and heading into the restaurant, figuring they were now having dinner. During the night, I stopped at a nearby hotel to shower and shave, so while I waited 30 minutes, I changed into the suit and tie I'd brought for the occasion. I walked up to the front desk, showed them a picture of my wife, and told them I needed to come to her table. The head waiter looked at me in my suit, with a large yellow folder in his hand, and showed me to a Marxista table. When we stopped in front of the table, both of its occupants looked up. It took Tracy about 5 seconds to realize she was looking at me, her husband, then she burst into tears. Marxist sat with perplexed and a worried expression on his face. "Just for the record, here Tracy," I said, placing the folder next to her plate. I quickly pulled out my cell phone and took a few photos of her, Marxista, and folders. With the click of a button, these photos were sent to my lawyer, my 3 children, Tracy's parents, and January. "By the way, great trinkets. I guess you have 24 pendants now." I turned on my heel and left. Behind me, I heard a lot of noise and a lot of conversations in Norwegian. I didn't care. I also turned off my phone. I returned to my original hotel and had the best night's sleep I've had in weeks. My flight home from Oslo was at 7 a.m., so I checked out of the hotel around 4 a.m., dropped off my rental car, and was at the airport by 5. About 12 hours later, I was sitting in my rocking chair in Dallas. Tracy's flight was scheduled for 3 hours later, and if I counted correctly, she probably wouldn't be going home right away. Rather, she will go to her parents for comfort. I placed my feet on the stand and turned on the phone. Looks like I've created a storm. Well, to be precise, Tracy was cooking up a storm. I was just a messenger. There were 23 voicemails and 16 text messages when everything was loaded. 9 messages and 6 texts were from Tracy. I did not listen to messages and did not respond to texts. I slowly finished my Jack Daniel's Tennessee Honey over ice. Then, when I was done, I called Alf. Out of everyone I've sent photos to, I felt the worst about sending them to him. I should have done better with him, but I was sure that if I hadn't sent him the photo, he wouldn't have believed me. "Dad, I'm sorry," were the first words I said as soon as he answered. I know it's a cruel way to find out the truth, but honestly, there wasn't a good way to tell you. He didn't speak for about 10 seconds, and I thought he was going to hang up when I heard a sob on the other end. He cried. "I understand, Brian," he said, "and it's me who needs to apologize to you. I thought I raised my daughter better. I know this may sound stupid, but I hope we can still be a family after this is all resolved between you and my daughter. You were such a big part of our lives." I heard him cry. He hung up carefully. Then I had a conference call with my 3 children. I always knew my kids were smart, but I still wasn't prepared for their first question, which was asked by the youngest, Marilyn. "Are we not your children, Jason and I?" she asked through tears. "Baby, you are all my children, until one of you 3 decides that you are not. Who sat with you when you were sick, who taught you long division, who coached your baseball and football teams. Being a father means so much more." We all cried a lot on that phone call, but when we finished, I think the kids realized that I wasn't going anywhere and our relationship didn't have to change. I told them about my plan to force Marcusta to pay and how I am going to divide this amount into 3 parts. Interestingly, we hardly talked about Tracy and I, and the only thing I understood from this conversation was that the children did not know more about the novel than I did. At least it was something. Tracy never came home that night. My guess that she would go to her parents was confirmed when Alf called around 10 p.m. and asked that we all meet on Monday. I had already left a message with my boss that I had personal matters to attend to, and I didn't think Tracy would be going to Johansson, so we set up a meeting for 2 p.m. at our house, at least not yet. Tracy and her parents arrived in separate cars, indicating that Tracy planned to stay at the house overnight. They arrived exactly at 2 o'clock. I offered Alf and Barb a drink. Alf joined me for a drink of Tennessee honey. Barb grabbed a Diet 7-Up. Tracy made her own drink. I didn't offer it to her, just as I didn't offer her a welcome kiss or hug. We all sat down in the living room, Alf and I in the chairs opposite the sofa where Tracy and Barb were sitting. There was an awkward moment of silence as we all took a sip of our drinks and looked into our glasses before Tracy began to sound hesitant. "Did you really have to go to Oslo to give me the documents? If you already knew, why didn't you save yourself and me the trouble and submit the documents here?" she asked. I don't know why, but I was expecting something like an apology. I was not impressed by this maneuver, because I needed to make sure that what I found out was true, that for 24 years, the woman I considered my soul mate gave herself the right to cheat once a year and sleep with someone else. "There is no need for such language, dear," Barb interrupted. "Yes, Mom, there are. And when you decide to be part of the delegation to come here, you put your tender feelings at risk. I love you and Dad like my own parents, but even if they were standing here now, I wouldn't be sensitive. The time for delicacy passed the moment your daughter cheated on me and returned home as if nothing had happened. Have I ever given you a reason to betray my trust in all the years of our marriage?" I asked, turning to Tracy. I saw Alf frown and raise his index finger towards Barb. I think there will be no more interruptions on her part. I looked at my wife with hatred, and she shifted uncomfortably on the sofa. "No, Brian, you never gave me a reason to betray you the way I did. I'm really sorry." "Then why did you continue this for so long? If you wanted Marcusta, why didn't you tell me about this? But making a fool and a cuckold out of me for 24 years. "Because I don't want Henrik. I want you, Brian. You are the one I want to spend the rest of my life with, the father of my children." "Stop," I shouted. "2 of them are not my children, at least not biologically. How dare you? You cheated on me and rubbed my nose in the face by having 2 children with that bastard. You have a twisted way of showing me love." Tracy had not seemed to speak to the children in recent days, and was completely taken aback that I knew that Jason and Marilyn were Henrik's children, and it looks like she didn't mention it to her parents because they both turned white as sheets. I thought I heard Barb start to cry, but I kept my eyes on Tracy. So not only are you betraying me, but you are also inflicting the ultimate disrespect. You force me to raise two children from another man. Just so you know, the kids already know, and it wasn't me who told them. They understood it from the photograph, just like I did. I simply confirmed their suspicions. Tracy lowered her head so I couldn't see the stunned expression on her face. "Oh shit, oh damn," she muttered. As she muttered to herself, I thought this would be a good time to replenish my drink supply. I raised my glass to Alf and looked at him. He raised his glass to me and nodded. He looked like a man who had been stabbed in the stomach. When I returned with the drinks, Tracy was more collected and started talking straight away. "Listen, honey, we can get through this. Henrik was just a special treat, once a year, on the other side of the world. I never took an ounce of love from you for him, and if you never found out, you would go to your grave believing that I was your soulmate, which I am. Can't we just go back to this?" "Why the hell do you think I'm an idiot?" I blurted out. "No, there are things that cannot be corrected, cannot be unseen. Your incredibly bad decisions doomed us. Alf, would you bring Barb back if she did to you what Tracy did to me?" "Honestly, Bri, no, I wouldn't return it." "So, no, Tracy, that won't happen," I said. "I'm sure that someday in the future I will be able to stop loving you, but I'm not sure that I will ever be able to stop hating you. Now, excuse me everyone, I'm going to the bar, where they show me respect. If you're smart, Tracy, you'll pack enough to stay with your parents for a long time, because you definitely won't be staying in this house while I'm here. Alf, Barb, sorry for being harsh. You know that I love you." End of discussion. I didn't need to hear any more lies. I grabbed my car keys and cell phone and headed to my place. Tracy tried to fight the divorce, so I played one of my cards and filed a lawsuit against Johansson for not following their moral code, which led to the destruction of my marriage. 3 days later, a crying Tracy told me she would sign the divorce papers. Apparently, she was fired for cause, which effectively ended her chances of getting another high-paying job at a company of Johansson's caliber. "I got the hint, Brian. There is no need to ruin my life further," she said. And then Karma Bitch took over this task. Because Tracy was fired, Johansson also had to fire Henrik, which was big news in the industry. It's not every day that the son of the CEO of a leading financial services company gets fired from his father's company, especially for having an affair with an employee. This also did not please Mrs. Henry Marcus, who apparently did not like her position in society being exposed to scandal. But she apparently didn't know about the children because when that lawsuit was filed, she threw a fit, smashing several expensive items in their plush Oslo home before filing for divorce, I'm told. So with the firing, the lawsuit, and the impending divorce against him, Marxist became a regular subject of tabloid news in Europe, and from what I heard his wife created quite a storm. In the end, Tracy was just one of 4 women he used, and he ended up having 9 children in addition to the 2 he had with his wife. An English prostitute tried to sue Johansson for sexual harassment, alleging that Marxist used his position to coerce her into sex, but the Norwegian court ridiculed this given that she had 2 children with him out of wedlock and kept coming back for more, agreeing with the claim Markestaff that it was a mutual affair. As might be expected, the topics of illicit sex, divorce, and children born out of wedlock to betrayed husbands were too tempting for the American press to ignore. Several newspapers and a couple of magazines played out the story, which briefly put us all in the spotlight. I didn't enjoy the sneaky looks I received when I went out to a restaurant or a show, so for about 3 months, I became a recluse, rarely going beyond the grocery store. Children seemed to handle it better at first, probably because they grew up in a digital age where nothing is really hidden. But a couple of weeks later, I received an evening call from a crying Marilyn who apparently had a hard time with the fact that the whole world knew that her mother was a cheater. "It's her problem, Mar, not yours," I said as calmingly as possible. You didn't do anything wrong. Don't apologize to her. You don't control her life. Thank you, Daddy, she replied. I know it's probably not easy for you either. I just needed someone to talk to. Although I felt bad for her, it was nice to know that in a crisis, Marilyn turned to me, her father, for comfort and advice. As for Tracy, Alf told me over dinner one Sunday at my house that she almost never leaves his house, and when she does, it's almost always at night and wearing a baseball cap. Most of her friends seemed to want little to do with her. After Tracy signed the divorce papers, we basically split everything equally. Since Tracy no longer had a job, I had to pay the remaining college expenses for Jason and Marilyn, but after receiving a large payout from Henrik Markista, I quickly closed that account before dividing the remaining money into 3 parts to create a trust fund for all the children. I also received a significant settlement from Johansen out of court to end my claim against the company. And since it wasn't part of the lawsuit and it happened after the divorce, I didn't have to split the money with Tracy. Most of this money, and my half of the profit from the sale of our house, went towards a small but beautiful house that I built for myself in one of the trendy areas of Dallas. I seriously thought about moving to one of the Paramount offices in another part of the country to get away from all the pitying looks and whispers, but after talking with Marilyn, I decided to take my own advice and live my life without worrying about what people think about it. What my ex-wife did. Yes, there was still pain, and there probably always would be, but it was time to move on. I just experienced one of life's greatest pleasures, walking my youngest daughter down the aisle at her wedding. It's been 6 years since my divorce, and my relationships with all of my children remain as strong as they were before the world found out that my 2 youngest children were not biologically mine. To their great credit, Jason and Marilyn never once doubted that I was their father, their dad, after they learned that Henrik Marxist was physically involved in their conception. As far as I know, they didn't even try to contact him, and according to them, he didn't even try to contact them. And this is for the better, it seems to me. I couldn't be prouder of Marilyn, who probably took her mother's betrayal and the subsequent birth of 2 children out of wedlock the hardest of all the children. I paid for her to see a psychologist several times until she said she was feeling well. Jason seemed to take it all in stride. They always talk about nature versus nurture, and in his case, nurture was stronger. He is completely different from me in appearance, but to my eyes, he is almost a miniature copy of me. All 3 kids eventually came to terms with Tracy somehow, which I'm probably glad for the sake of their own mental health. I try to keep my opinions about their mother's betrayal to myself because I don't think judging her will make me a better person in their eyes. Besides, when I needed to vent my feelings, it was always January. Other than at the wedding, I really have no reason to talk to Tracy about anything, so I don't. The pain and anger still haven't gone away, although little by little my love for her is fading away. I didn't initiate conversations with her at the wedding and only spoke to her when she approached me first, in situations that I couldn't ignore. I stood next to her for the wedding photos, trying to look happy, but if you look closely, you can see that there was literally space between us in the photos. Other than that meeting when she got home, Tracy never tried to explain the affair or give me a real apology. I think she just thought there was absolutely no way she could get caught, so I guess she never planned to tell me ever. It was just a complete coincidence that I even found out. But even if it was just a little extracurricular fun like she claimed, it still doesn't explain why she had 2 kids with that bastard. About a year after the divorce, Alf told me over a bottle of Tennessee honey that I was probably right about Tracy having feelings for the jerk. After I told her to leave, she tried to contact Marcus, but he did not answer her calls. Then she found out about the other 3 mistresses. Even Barb had to admit that she looked like nothing more than a fool being used by a rich man for sex. Even though I'm only 51, I don't see myself finding anyone I'd like to spend the rest of my life with. I'm not sure I'll ever be able to trust a woman as completely as I trusted Tracy again. So yes, there are times when I wonder if I would have been better off if I had remained a naive idiot. Of course, this isn't the ending to the story that I wanted, but sometimes real life isn't all puppies and rainbows. Sometimes these are snippets of conversations overheard at airports during flight delays. Subscribe to our channel so that your love doesn't cheat on you, and go ahead and listen to the next story, because this story is nothing compared to the next one. If you're under 18, don't even think click to the next one.